Hi, my name is Naomi, and I'm assuming if you clicked on this video, you might be wondering what can you be doing to pass the CPA exam, or trying to find those little points that might help you get the 75 that you need. I know a lot of people score much higher than that, but these are my tips on how I applied the effort that I needed to get just the minimum score. I wasn't trying to get the minimum score, but I just so happened to get a 76. So I'm not sure if it was luck or, if there are other things involved, but I do think I felt much better throughout my experience with this specific exam today, which I'll be talking about, and that'll be the FAR portion. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. So some of the mistakes that I made at the very beginning were I took too much advice from the internet and didn't really trust myself to create my own study schedule. So some of that involved like going to Reddit or going to the Facebook group or other websites. I know some of you might know Another 71. I went ahead and took some like personal advice from some things that other people did on Reddit, and so somebody suggested, their own like lazy man's method to pass the exam in as short amount of time as possible. That might not always work with you depending on your learning personality. I know that I tend to learn a little slower than others, so I don't know why I thought that this time would be different, but I just really wanted to get this over with, as I'm sure you all understand. So that was my first mistake. And that method, I'll just go ahead and share it with you guys, was so you don't repeat it, or you can do it, but my biggest tip would just be to find your own way, or just kind of experiment a little, but don't waste too much time, because my biggest mistake was going throughout the whole exam experience and never really identifying to or sticking with a plan. It was always like me changing my plan constantly and being insecure about whether or not it was effective. And of course, it's not effective because I hadn't really stuck to a plan to begin with, so I was kind of all over the place. So, anyways, this plan that I followed was to watch all the lecture videos at the very beginning, just all at once. So, over the course of an entire week, I just gone throughout this entire textbook and taken the notes along with the lectures. And I guess the premise to this was to just have exposure to like everything that could possibly be on this exam, so that going into it, the idea was that going into it, once you do that, going back and doing the questions would be like you don't feel anxiety about what you may see later on because you've already seen it. But for me, I had already forgotten everything as soon as I finished watching all the lectures, so that did not work for me personally. So that was the mistake that I made. And even in the review, I followed another person's review strategy, which was to go by like each chapter individually. So chapter 1, do 100 questions, see your weak points, go back and hammer those. Chapter 2, hit all the questions, etc., etc. That didn't work for me because it wasn't indicative of the real exam. The real exam, they give you a set of 33 questions and 2 separate testlets. So I think it didn't mentally prepare me for what the real test would look like I just said. So that is another important tip. Cumulative reviews, I would probably do that from the beginning, and I'll go into that more later on how I changed my strategy to get from a 55 on my first attempt to a 76 on my second. Yes, so I wouldn't recommend just going by each chapter individually, because that's not what it's going to be like on the real exam, and you just have to, I think it is important to mentally prepare yourself, and that goes into whether I did the skills practice or the simulations or the mock exams. So to start right off, the first time through, I did not touch the skills practice or the simulations, only because I had taken like practice, like AICPA sponsored exams. So I'd already been a little familiar with what simulations look like, the authoritative literature. I had some classes that specifically worked with that tool. So I think that if you are comfortable with the material, or not comfortable with the material even, but well, yes, always be comfortable with the material, but if you're comfortable with how to use the like the different the way that they have it set up in the skills practice and the simulations, especially because the simulations do appear on the real exam, then I wouldn't say that you need to necessarily do all of them, just enough so that you feel, like I said, comfortable with the way that it's set up. And that goes into the mock exams. I personally didn't do the mock exams. I've heard that they're a waste of time. Again, that's just me. I heard that they were. I tried to do one and I just kind of stopped in the middle of it because it did feel like it was eating up my time. It's 4 hours of your day, and if you do all of them, that's 12 hours. Um, you could more better use that time to just go through sets of multiple choice questions. And something that I've heard that I do believe is true now after my experience is that simulations basically are just miniature multiple choice questions. That being said, a lot of them are very long and drawn out, but I do think that if you approach them like mini multiple choice questions, that you are just not going to be as intimidated by them. And so I'll just go through what happened on my first test and how did I pass the second time. So the first time I took my test, I really thought that I was ready, as ready as I could be, because I don't think anybody could ever, maybe some people feel completely ready, and those are probably those Elijah Watt Sells winners, but that is not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about how to pass the CPA exam with a minimum score. So my experience was that I went into the test, the first question was really easy for me. So I was like, okay, out of the gate, I got this. But the further I went along the testlet, the more questions I was marking or bookmarking for later. So I was getting worried about that. And then these weren't difficult. It was just that I wasn't sure like what the right answer was right off the bat. So that's why I marked those questions. And then, I was kind of iffy about the first testlet, so I submitted it anyways. I did my best, but I noticed that, so if you guys didn't know, like if you do well on the first testlet, you will get a harder testlet, supposedly. It's on the AICPA's website. Um, People think that the harder testlet is has longer questions and they're a little more long and drawn out with maybe a lot of filler. So I got to my second testlet and immediately I just clicked through and went through different questions to see whether I got the harder testlet. And much to my dismay, I did not get the harder testlet. I don't know if I did or not, but I'm pretty sure. So right off the bat, I was already thinking, oh my God, I'm failing this exam. I've already failed the exam. Mentally, I had already failed the exam. So that was not a good headspace to be in. So the second testlet, I was just really down. I didn't really want to be there anymore, so I kind of just winged it. And even for the questions that I marked the second time, whereas the first time, like I actually tried to do my best, but the second time it felt like, you know, mentally, like I said, I wasn't really there anymore. I was just kind of marking what it might have been, but not really going through and like confirming it as much as you would treat it if it were a real test. And never do that because you paid a lot of money to be there. That's one thing that I really regret. I'm not sure if I would have passed if I had approached it differently, but I do think I would have done a lot better. Um, so I submitted that testlet. Multiple choice questions were over. I think I took a break after that before the simulations, but I don't really remember. But the simulations were hard. They were much harder than I expected them to be. I say that smiling because I'm just glad I don't have to do them anymore, but they were hard. And, if I'm treating them like mini multiple choice questions, like if I already felt like I'd failed before I got to that point, you can imagine how the Sims went. So I just kind of breezed through that section, crossed my fingers, and hoped for the best. Thought that I failed and that I would pass because a lot of people say that they feel that way. And that was a little naive of me, but it was my first exam, so I wasn't sure how exactly it was going to go. But I did wait out the score, or actually, I did go back and study for those section FAR again as if I failed because in the back of my mind, I was like, people say that they think they fail but pass, but is that going to happen? I don't know. So I wasn't quite sure. So I went back and studied through the material. This time I did it the way that I study for audit, and I'll go into that in a separate video. But for the second attempt, I did go through what I thought I actually struggled with and kind of convinced myself that I knew when I really didn't know. And I did mix up the chapters in cumulative random sets of 33 multiple choice questions, and I didn't go too crazy. A lot of people say hit the multiple choice questions only and you'll be fine. That might work for some people, but for me, I just did 3 sets of those each day up until the score release, the score release for my first exam, and really tried to understand where I went wrong. If I still didn't get it, I would go back through the book and watch separate videos on YouTube or look at the skills practice that time to see if that actually helped concrete my knowledge a little more. I did have flashcards, so I had flashcards for any formula, maybe vocab term or mnemonic that might be helpful. I will say some of the mnemonics in Becker, I found them really hard to memorize, so if you can come up with your own, which I did for some of them, or maybe just 1 or 2 that were really big mnemonics, I think it'll really help. Um, but I did get my score release and I was obviously very disappointed. I called my parents telling them maybe I'm not cut out for this, maybe this is a mistake. Um, and I did just wallow for a day, but the next day I got back at it and kept doing what I just explained I've been doing with the cumulative questions and the reviewing. And this time, when I went into the second exam, oh, and actually, I did this within 2 or 3 weeks. So even with a score like a 55, I really believed that, I just gotten maybe a more difficult exam, or mostly I think my headspace just would not have gotten me there anyways. So for the second attempt, when I went into the testing center, I took a. There's someone doing yard work right outside my window, so sorry about that. So the second attempt, I treated it like every testlet was its own separate test, and I think that's really important. That's a really key point here for me because um, after what I mean by that is after every testlet, I forgave myself for any mistakes that I may have made, but I really did, give it 100%. There's a that. I really did give it 100%, and I submitted the first testlet, and I know I got the easier testlet the second time. Nothing had changed, but I did say to myself, this is an opportunity to like gain the points back that I might have missed on the first one, and I can still pass. And I know you can still pass because they say that on their website. If you get an easier second testlet, if you do better on the second one, you do have a chance to pass. So I did that and I submitted it, and each time I submitted a testlet, I just took a moment, maybe just even less than a minute, to just breathe and clear my head and remind myself every testlet, in my head is its own test. If you can give yourself like a clear headspace at the beginning of every testlet, that might redeem me for my first score. So I did that, and I did use the authoritative literature not only for the research question, but I actually used it for some of the simulations, and I think it really helped. You'd be surprised how much it helps. I know time is short as it is, but if you do find the time to use it, I would definitely use it. And just pace yourself, slow down, breathe. Sorry, guys, there's a knot. Breathe, and I promise you, if you just believe in yourself, as weird as that sounds, I think it will help you in the long run. And I mean, I think it did for me at least. I did get a 76 the second time. Yes, I got it. I did get a 76 the second time, and I really attribute that to just my mentality the second time. I don't think it's really common for someone to get as low as scores in the 50s and to pass the second time. Usually people take a month or two to relearn all the material. Some people say you need to start from the beginning, even if you score in the 70s, because it means that you didn't know everything as much as you think you did. And I know I didn't for sure. And as someone who scored in the 50s the first time, I know I didn't. But I think I used my time really effectively, which a lot of that was just making sure you understand what you got, what you did wrong, how you missed the question, because some of them, it might be luck that you're getting them right. So just don't, it's a learning experience. Like, don't focus so much on getting it right or getting it wrong in the sense that like you don't take the time to understand why one answer was right while the others are wrong. That's really important. So make sure you do that. I'm going to stop talking now because this video is getting really long, but I really do hope that this helps you. My experience might not be the same as yours, but um, just headspace is a lot for me when I'm going into these exams as someone with test anxiety. So give it a shot and just believe in yourself. Know that you're gonna get that CPA license in due time, and we're all gonna get there together. All right, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.